Evacuations continue across California, where several wildfires to the north and south are still threatening thousands of people and livestock as strong winds and dry weather fuel the flames. The so-called Maria fire sparked overnight in Ventura County, that's just north of Los Angeles. It's forced thousands out of their homes and has already torched more than 8,000 acres. We're taking a closer look today at the impact these fires are having on schools in the Golden State. CalMatters dives into the issue in a new article which says that the new wave of wildfires and missed school days has become a new normal as one disaster gives way to the next. So Ricarodo Cano wrote that article. He's an education reporter for CalMatters, and he's joining me now from Sacramento. So thank you for joining us, Ricarodo. You know, you say in the article people and children who have lived in sort of fire-prone areas have learned how to deal with the occasional wildfire. But what we've been seeing year after year are these mega fires and a wildfire season, if you will, that almost doesn't end. It goes year-round. So you looked at years of data on this issue. How exactly are schools being impacted by these wildfires?
So historically, it's pretty common for schools to have to close in California for wildfires. There's 21,000 total days of instruction lost that we calculated since 2002. But noticeably, half of those days lost of lost instruction have happened since 2015 due to wildfires. So we've seen over the last 4 years schools that have cumulatively lost almost an entire month of instruction due to fires, and now the public safety power shutoffs that utility companies here are utilizing.
Yeah, so add those days to, you know, when fires actually threatening the neighborhoods. Just out of curiosity, I mean, what happens? How do kids make up those days? Do they get tacked on the end of the year, or I don't know, are they sort of attending classes at shelters? How does it work?
Sure. So for the most part, for most schools in the state, those days aren't made up. You know, the state doesn't require schools that report emergency school closures to the Department of Education here to make up those days because they essentially get attendance waivers that excuse these schools for having to close during emergency situations, such as school safety threats, natural disasters, power outages, you name it. So essentially, these days are lost unless you're a rural school district that historically deals with snow days, that historically deals with inclement weather, and you are able to build in those days into your academic calendar. But we don't see that for most schools in the state.
So, you know, there's one thing to lose time in the classroom, lose time being educated, but there is also the emotional impact, and that's an emotional impact that's being felt by not just the students, but also the teachers that live in, you know, the exact same communities. Can we talk a little bit about the lingering emotional damage when a student or a teacher or staff have to live through this sort of thing?
Absolutely. I spoke with dozens of educators and families and students for the story that we reported out earlier this year. And there's schools in the state that have been hit by very catastrophic wildfires. The Tubbs Fire in 2017 that affected Santa Rosa City schools, the Valley Fire in 2015 that affected the Middletown School District in rural Lake County. And these are students that every year they're having to evacuate or experience school closures for a week or more than a week due to hazardous air quality. And as it's been explained to me by parents and educators in those areas, is, you know, kids aren't able to have some sort of closure for the initial fires that they experienced where they lost their homes or where they had to evacuate through flames. And it just, every year, you know, these incidents resurface the trauma that educators and students are dealing with. We calculated that since 2015, there have been more than 8,000 students in the state who've lost their homes. And so those challenges fall on the school afterward.
You know, often when we talk about the cost of climate change, we are literally talking about dollars and cents, how much it costs to replace a house, how much it will cost should a, I don't know, barrier island go under, and the structures there are lost. But what you're describing is another type of cost, and it's associated with climate change.
It is. You know, these fires that have erupted in the last few years have grown far more violent. They're happening at further later times in the year, October, November, even December, with fires in Ventura County. And it's really obstructing schools' ability here to have a safe days of instruction. We're seeing it right now with the power shutoffs and the fires that have grown in the last month. We're in the process of calculating and gathering school closure information for schools in the state that have had to close so far. But at this point, it's been hundreds of thousands of schools, hundreds of thousands of kids who've been affected by school closures in rural areas that have had to close because they don't have any power and it's 20 degrees in the morning and it's just not safe to have kids at school, to the urban areas like Los Angeles Unified, the nation's second largest school district, has had to close schools on 3 separate occasions for 3 different fires so far this year.
So this is certainly looking year after year like the new normal. Are school districts adapting? Have they developed workarounds? I mean, when I hear you talk, I think that we could see students in California sort of slowly, bit by bit, slipping behind the students in the rest of the country because they literally don't have the same amount of time in the classroom.
Absolutely. And so, you know, research does show that losing significant amount of instruction time has a pretty significant impact on student outcomes. Governor Gavin Newsom and our state superintendent of public instruction, Tony Thurmond, visited one of the schools in El Dorado County yesterday that was able to keep the lights on during the power shutoffs. And, you know, they both said, you know, we don't accept that this is going to be the new normal for schools. It can't take 10 years for the state to figure out how to mitigate these issues. And so one thing that has been floated so far by the California Department of Education and the state superintendent is, you know, rethinking the traditional calendar, academic calendar, and perhaps requiring that schools budget emergency days to make up for these closures. And so that's one. Certainly one aspect that I heard a lot about from school officials who've been dealing with this for the last couple of years, because it is frustrating for them to have to close their schools each year for a week and then not see that time made up or to see the effects of that play out.
Yeah, Ricarodo Cano, really interesting. You know, we talk a lot about these fires here on CBSN, but you sort of, you know, shed some light on another, it's a sort of, I guess, negative impact that we often don't discuss because, like I said before, we're usually talking about the homes lost or, you know, animals, structures, cars, but not about the emotional toll that it's having on the kids in these communities. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.